Welcome to our virtual Scholars Day presentation by Sarah Neumann. She will be presenting her honors thesis as part of the Carl Goodson Honors Program. This presentation and others can be found on OBU Scholarly Commons. I will now turn things over to Sarah, who can tell you a little bit about herself before giving her presentation. Sarah, you can share your screen now if you'd like, or we can keep you on the screen.
I'm sorry. Volume on mute, so I heard nothing. I'm so sorry.
You heard nothing?
Yes, I accidentally had my computer's volume on mute and I forgot. And so when you were talking, I only caught that last end bit. I'm sorry.
That's all right, Sarah. I was just welcoming all the people who are watching, and then I was turning things over to you. Would you like to share your screen? Are you ready to give your presentation?
Yes, I will go ahead and do that. Okay. It says I cannot share my screen while you are still sharing your screen.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Okay, so today I'm doing my thesis of cracking the case on age-appropriate literature, and I'm Neumann. Of my thesis to create a kit to help educators select books for students to read, and so this is based on the average child, so it's not a fail-safe guide for every student. It's just a generic guide for your standard student to help you choose what literature is appropriate for teaching your student how to read. So my process, I first identified criteria to use to evaluate literature. So my first criteria was level text versus decodable text. So level texts are your books that are categorized by level of difficulty. So students take which level to fall into, and they reach your traditional kind of view of using books. And then you also have decodable text, which are based on fonts and high frequency words. With decodable text, a teacher would teach a phonics lesson, and students would read a book based on that lesson. And so they're using information that they've learned into decoding. And so that's how decodable text work. Then you have vocabulary. And so that looking in books, it's just the diversity of words, the number of new words, and age suitability. For illustration, it's just how many are and how they contribute to the story. For format, this is just the way the book comes. So if the board book, a chapter book, just its general format. And characters are how deep they are, how many there are. And then for plot, what I looked at was the complexity and how that suits the age and developmental range. And then I researched by just looking into these different criteria and then also looking into age appropriateness and to match those together to find what criteria best suited what age level. And then I used that research to develop my guide. So, first, I will talk about kindergarten. Again, this is a guide for just elementary, so it goes K through 6. And so now I will how the criteria fits for each grade level. So for kindergarten, since students are in the pre-alphabetic stage, so they're still in the stage of learning letters, but they're not learning how to decode quite. So they will not be decodable texts because those are no use to them. So they will have more authentic text that the teacher are reading to them to expose students to more vocabulary, story structure, and just fostering that desire to read. Then in vocabulary, you want to use vocabulary to expand the listening vocabulary. So once students start to learn to read, that listening vocabulary is essential. So at this stage, you just really want to expose students to all of the vocabulary that you can is appropriate for their age level to help them once they start learning to read. For illustrations, they will tell the story just as much as the words do. So having vibrant illustration is vital. For format, you'll generally have picture books because, again, the pictures are helping to tell the story for the students to understand. Then for characters, you'll have few characters and they will stay simple so that students can follow along easily. And for plot, you want it active, you want it straightforward, not much development at all. You just get in, tell the story, and then it's done. Then we have first grade, and first grade students should be reading decodable texts because they're learning those phonics lessons, and so they're practicing those phonics skills as they go. And so that's why decodable texts are important. So they're practicing those skills that they're learning. And you would probably use literary text for read louds, but for students reading on their own, decodable texts are the way to go. For vocabulary, you want it to be simple and not too challenging since they are just learning to read on their own. You want it to be compatible with dialect and what students are often hearing because it will help them understand as they're just now learning to read. And then you want the decodable text to support the syllable patterns that you have already taught. And so it goes back to helping students be able to decode what they're reading. For illustrations, these are to facilitate understanding, to help students understand what's going on. So lots of illustrations are important at this point. For format, you will have decodable readers. And for characters, you should have them be relatable and aspirational, but still a few number of them so that they can keep track of the story and continue going on. And for plot, you want it to be fast, you want it to be action-packed, you want it to be creative and exciting, and you also want it to be developed and resolved quickly. So once the story starts, it should immediately go from the problem and then into the resolution, so no background information at this point. In second grade, you will probably start the year in decodable texts as the students are still getting solid on those phonological skills, and then you will transition into level text based on the student's proficiency with their phonics skills. Once decoding is automatic, level texts are the normal from here on out. Ability to stay codable and appropriately challenging, but not overwhelming. All new words should be decodable, and the vocabulary should mimic language that the teacher wants the student to use. And so if that's content-related language or the kind of language the teacher's trying to foster in the class, that is what the vocabulary should mimic. For illustrations, these are to enhance the story, but they're less for telling the story. So these are more for helping with foreshadowing, elaborating on what's happening, not necessarily just directly mimicking what is going on in the book. Format, you want early readers. There will be some short chapters here, but mostly the format of these books is to build confidence in literary skills. So you want your books to support the students' growth so that they want to continue to read. And characters, these characters should be real and relatable. There can be more numerous now, so there's more complexity to the story. But you don't want it to be too complex because still need a more simple character, more simple structure. And so for plot, you want it to be exciting and straightforward. You can have minor twists at this point, and you want to be focused on the main problem and resolution. So little background, still focus on the problem resolution, but you can have a few twists here and there. For third grade, you will use level text again because you're hoping that they're automatic with their decoding skills by now. For vocabulary, you will have a wider variety of dialects. You'll introduce more different, like regional dialects rather than just what the students are familiar with hearing. And you want to expand the vocabulary without overwhelming the students. For illustrations, they will be less frequent, though still appropriate for read-alouds. You still want to have those visual books for read-alouds. And then they're used to enhance the story or foreshadowing. So when illustrations occur, that is their purpose. Format, you want chapter books. You want to go beyond honing reading skills, and the students are now reading for enjoyment. So they are going to choose the style of their book, and you want to push them more towards choose chapter books. For characters, you want to have more characters, so you can have more character development in that as well. You will have background stories at the stage, and then you want your characters to have to set a positive moral example while still being interesting and relatable to these students, because they're still very impressionable at this age. And for plot, you want it to be fast-paced, but it will have more plot and character development. So plots can be a little bit darker, but still on the whole, they'll be positive. But there's more to these plots now. For 4th grade, you're going to have level text because they should be automatic with decoding. For vocabulary, you'll have a wide variety of dialects and language. It's more advanced. To meet their level, should be expanding their vocabulary. For illustrations, they're nearly non-existent, but if used, they are sporadic and don't usually add much meaning to the story. The format of these books should be chapter books. They will be longer than those previously seen in 3rd grade, but chapter books. For characters, they should be realistic and relatable, which is generally the theme throughout all of them, to be relatable. And then the characters show more sincere emotion. So there's more of that emotional element now drawn into 4th grade. And then for plot, it'll be slower now. So up to this point, it's been fast and action-packed. Now we slow down to do that main problem and resolution. That is more realistic, and it is increasingly complex. So the students are getting a more in-depth storytelling rather than just basic problem resolution. For 5th grade, students will be reading level text. Vocabulary there will be a large range of vocabulary and writing styles to expose students to a variety of language. This is often aligned with the student's reading level, so there's more varied choice of book, but it's very much based on the student's level and ability. For illustrations, they're non-existent in their literary texts. Format, chapter books, and these are a variety of levels and length because, like I said, this is very based on their level, on what they can read. For characters, realistic, relatable, and positive moral examples. And for the plot, you want your characters' development to be central. So it's more mature in that way. Character emotion drive plot, and there are many layers of problem and solution. So there can be sub-problems, twists, that sort of thing. So it's layered. And then finally, for 6th grade, we have level text still. For vocabulary, there are various dialects and they're more advanced. For illustrations, they're limited basically to just instructional text at this point. So having illustrations in their literary texts should be non-existent. For format, they can read chapter books or young adult novels based more on interest rather than reading level. So 5th grade was very based on reading level. 6th grade is more based on interest. So this is where you'll see students branching out more, trying different books that may be out of their level, but more in their interests. For characters, books are chosen by interest. So characters often reflect some reader admires. Therefore, you can be so your students books that though the characters are still likable, realistic, they can also be a good role model, also be an interest to a child. And then for the plot will take longer to develop. It'll have more details. It'll have subplots and twists. So there are more complex problems, and they're going to tend to be more mature. Also, the characters' emotions are driving a lot of the story now, and so that will be reflected in the plot as well. So that's it. Thank you for watching, and just when choosing literature, just bear in mind that the child's ability level and interest should also be central. Again, this guide is not specific to every child, but it is generic to help choose literature. So, thank you. How do I stop sharing my screen? There we go. Okay.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
And I can take questions now.
Great. I have a question for you. So
Okay.
you talk a lot about the different types of books and formats, but I noticed that you only talk about informative books when you get to 6th grade. Should younger grades be looking at informative or nonfiction books?
Yes, so you want to have a good mixture of fiction and nonfiction. I generally looked just generically at fiction because that was, I guess, more geared to what most students enjoy reading. But in a classroom setting, when you're doing read alouds to a whole group and even just encouraging students on their own, you want to include more of that nonfiction to give that, I guess, kind of reading as well. But generically, I just looked at fiction.
Great. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Any other questions?
Well, thank you very much, Sarah. Your presentation was wonderful. Great job.
Thank you. Thank you for watching. Bye.